Now let me set the record straight. M. Night Shyamalan, along with Michael Bay, Terrence Malick, and even Darren Aronofsky, is quite considered to being one of the most divisive directors working in Hollywood today. For my money, he was a director known for making 2 fantastic movies, only to throw the baby out with the bathwater and fumble the ball harder than Ernest Biner, making one egregious steaming pile after another, with movies like The Village, Lady in the Water, which was made as a middle finger to all the film critics who think that his stuff stinks, The Happening, The Last Airbender, which is one of the worst movies ever made, After Earth, and yes, The Visit, which is a film I consider to be one of the most insultingly stupid movies of the found footage genre. But that's not to say that every single film that M. Night Shyamalan has made is terrible. I mean, he has made fantastic movies in the past, like The Sixth Sense, which was nominated for an Oscar, and my personal favorite, Unbreakable. Unbreakable was the kind of movie that manages to be not only original, but something that we have never expected out of M. Night Shyamalan. And it was a movie that made M. Night Shyamalan so great in the past, like a brilliant storytelling, beautiful cinematography, and a gratifying twist. And a year later, after the abhorrent movie The Visit, he managed to create Split, which I thought was okay. It wasn't really anything interesting, it wasn't really anything out of the extraordinary, but I thought it was a movie that really served its purpose well, while also delivering a great performance by James McAvoy. But then M. Night Shyamalan decided to pull off the biggest, ballsiest twist known to mankind. What if Split was a sequel to the original Unbreakable? And it was a twist that blew everyone's mind. It was something that we haven't even expected. And it all got us hyped for the next movie, which is the film we are talking about right now, the 3rd movie in the Unbreakable trilogy known as Glass. But the real query must be asked. Does the twist actually pay off? Was it something to be worth revealing in the first place? Well, when it comes to M. Night Shyamalan's newest movie, in the words of Varg Vikernes, let's find out. In this movie Glass, it takes place 3 years after the original Glass, and 19 years after the original Unbreakable, in which Kevin Wendell Crumb, who was played by James McAvoy once again, has managed to kidnap a group of 4 high school cheerleaders who are made to be lambs of the slaughter for his most evil personality known as the Beast. However, the girls are luckily saved by Bruce Willis, who returns as David Dunn from the original Unbreakable and helps fend off the Beast. That is until after their brawl, they are encountered and taken in by the head doctor of a mental institution, played by Sarah Paulson, who is given 3 days to convince the patients that they aren't superheroes, only normal people who think have the abilities of superheroes. And so it's up to Kevin, David, and Mr. Glass, played once again by Samuel L. Jackson, to escape the facility and prove to the world that superheroes exist. So what did I personally think of Glass? Well, with Unbreakable being just fantastic and Split being just okay, Glass, however, is yet another bad movie from M. Night Shyamalan and manages to be the worst movie in the Unbreakable trilogy by a wide margin. This movie manages to take what made the first Unbreakable so fantastic and Split being just a decent watch and makes it worse. For starters, the story really isn't anything to write home about. Sure, we have seen numerous movies that have to deal with people being captured in captivity, trying to escape from a mental institution, or just locked up in anything by a stranger who prevents them from getting away. One of the examples I have for this kind of scenario is a movie called 10 Cloverfield Lane. Not only did the movie do a very good job at setting you in this kind of atmosphere, as well as setting up a well-written story, but the film had characters you cared about and it had development within the dialogue. In Glass, it tries to do that sort of concept, which I'm all for, but it doesn't do it well enough. Instead of having proper character development and very good dialogue, the film spends more time just talking about and giving you a lecture about how comic books basically embrace the strengths and weaknesses of humankind, and how characters basically build who we are as people. And the film spends most of its time doing that than proper character development. One of the best parts about Unbreakable is the character development. It is the well-written dialogue. It is the compatible chemistry between David Dunn and Mr. Glass. But the movie doesn't have the gumption to do any of that, because what really hurts this movie is the pacing. Now, the first act starts off very decent. It starts off like a true sequel to Unbreakable and Split, and it puts you on the edge of your seat for what's gonna happen next. However, in the second act, like I said before, it starts to meander and become so repetitive, because most of the second act is Sarah Paulson talking to people, exchanging dialogues about comic books between the main three captives, and then Sarah Paulson goes into more conversations with the remaining people from the Unbreakable and Split movies, such as the son from Unbreakable, Mr. Glass's mother, and Anya Taylor-Joy, who was the survivor in Split. And it basically starts to repeat itself throughout the majority of the second act. And the third act of the movie, I'll get to the third act. Now, Unbreakable was never usually about the action sequences. It was mostly setting up well-written characters, a fantastic story, and atmosphere. However, when the film does decide to bring up action sequences between the Horde and David Dunn, I don't think that they were well done at all. Some of the action scenes in this movie, while they are minimal, are pretty cool at points, but sometimes they are really ruined by poor cinematography. At some points, the cinematography uses GoPro close-ups to follow the characters' movements, have the characters punch the camera every time an action scene is happening. And while that is sometimes the entirety of the action cinematography, whenever there is no action scene being involved, it's absolutely marvelous. In fact, there are some bits of cinematography that look outstanding, like the long-range shot of the insane asylum from a distance. And there are some beautiful shots that bear quite resemblance of M. Night Shyamalan's previous movies in the past. The good ones. Another thing I would like to add is that the acting in this movie, it does the job, but it does have its significant drawbacks. Samuel L. Jackson, he's great in this movie, reprising his role as Elijah Price. And while he spends most of his time in sedation, what Samuel L. Jackson does great is when he acts with his eyes. And you'll always see that whenever he's sedated, you can always tell that he is always plotting something to get away. James McAvoy is good in the role as Kevin, but at some points, it feels like he is really overcooking his performance in the overacting department. Now, that really isn't a bad thing, but it was something that really wasn't even remotely striking as was in Split. But the most disappointing performance, I would say, is Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis, who was recently in one of the worst remakes ever made, is sleepwalking throughout this whole movie. And it's disappointing because I really liked his character from Unbreakable. And seeing how this is the trilogy, I wanted to see how his character grew. The problem is that he doesn't have a character arc. He's barely even utilized in this movie, and whenever he is utilized, he's only made to move the plot forward. And of course, other performances such as Sarah Paulson, Anya Taylor-Joy, and even the kid from the last Unbreakable movie, they all provide efficient performances that help sell their characters. But I would say that the biggest problem with this movie is the last act of the movie. This film's last act of this movie is anticlimactic and aggressively unsatisfying. I have no idea why M. Night Shyamalan thought that this ending or this climax was a great idea to begin with. Basically by saying that, oh, don't worry, it's just a deconstruction of big budget blockbusters, so of course you're gonna get an abrupt final act that isn't gonna be big and boisterous. But the final act of the movie doesn't even do it well. Now, I can't tell you how the last act of the movie went, but it's just ridiculous. And speaking of ridiculous, the twist. Now, M. Night Shyamalan is known for delivering good twists and bad twists. Here in this movie, he has delivered 3 twists. 3. And of course, I won't spoil you the twist, but the final act, along with the twists in the movie, not only deliver one disappointing send-off to characters, but one disappointing ending to what could be a great trilogy. Overall, guys, Glass is yet another swing and a miss from M. Night Shyamalan. It strives to be a deconstruction of big blockbuster superhero movies and a sequel to Split and Unbreakable, and doesn't do either particularly well as a result. While there are some good performances out there, and the cinematography is nonetheless visually creative, the story really isn't anything to write home about. The pacing is spotty and sloppy, the character development isn't as effective as its predecessors, the action scenes are ruined by very weak cinematography, and the last act of this movie, including the twist, ruins something that could have been special out of this trilogy. So with that being said, I'm going to have to give Glass a 1 out of 5. Alright guys, that is my review of Glass. Comment below, let me know what you thought about the movie, and trust me, I'm curious. Find me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and also if you would like to see more reviews like this, be sure to subscribe for more. My name is Nukem, and you, my friends, have been blown away.